Abel are the first two human beings in the fallen world. So in the actual world, in the world of history, in the world we occupy. They're born and not made by God. And they represent two patterns of sacrifice. The two patterns of sacrifice that characterize culture and psyche, individual and community. The fundamental patterns, just like Adam and Eve are the fundamental patterns of masculinity and femininity, Cain and Abel, the hostile brothers, are the twin patterns of sacrifice or work that characterize the human approach to reality. Abel, who's Abel? Abel aims up. He makes the sacrifices that are of the highest quality. Abel is a herder, and he takes the best animals and he butchers them, and he takes the best cut, and he takes the best pieces of that, and he immolates it on an altar because he wants to dramatize, because that's what he's doing, playing out the idea that the best is what will satisfy the spirit of the cosmic order. Do you believe that? Well, you either believe that or the opposite. Like, those are your options. There's a no non-belief option here. You believe one thing or another. If you offer your best, will you be accepted? Because that's God's pronouncement to Cain. Cain takes the opposite stance. He offers what's second best. And it doesn't work. Well, is that true? Well, how often have you offered anything but your best and had it work? And then you might think, well, why would you even think it could work? Because life is very difficult. It's very difficult. And if you're going to make a success out of it, or something that isn't an absolute hell, it's fairly probable that you're going to have to bring your best to the table. Because, like, you think, who do you think you are? You think you're the sort of person who can defy the structure of reality itself? That you can fool yourself and other people and the natural order and God by offering what's second rate and succeeding. That's your theory. That's not a wise theory. Not in the face of the difficulties of life. That's Cain's theory. That's what he tries to do. And what happens to him? It says in the text, his countenance falls. What does that mean? He's bitter, resentful, miserable, unhappy, and vengeful. Well, why? Well, because he's being rejected. Well, why is he being rejected? Because he's not bringing his best to the table. And so what does Cain do? Well, he doesn't do what Abel does. Abel always aims up, right? He makes the sacrifices that are acceptable to God. That's his story, because he brings what's of the highest quality to the table. Cain doesn't. Cain fails, is bitter, miserable, and resentful. And what does he do? Well, he doesn't admit it, because he's not able. He calls out God. And so he has a little chat with God, just like we all do when we're bitter and failing. How did you make this world where I'm breaking myself in half, and all that's happening is I'm failing? And my brother, Abel, the sun shines on him. Everything he does touches to gold. What the hell's wrong with the moral order? What's wrong with the spirit who created existence itself? That's Cain's challenge to God. It's a hell of a thing to think about failure as a consequence of second-rate effort. It's like, well, I'm failing because God made the world wrong. There isn't a more prideful presumption than that. And it doesn't really work on God. And God says to Cain, if you did well, you'd be accepted. And what does that mean? It means if you brought absolutely everything you had to bear on the circumstances at hand, and you left nothing behind, if you were willing to sacrifice everything necessary, you could have what you needed and wanted. But nothing short of that will suffice, right? That's why this is why Christ in the Gospels calls upon his followers to abandon even their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers if they're going to walk uphill. This is why Abraham is called upon to sacrifice Isaac to God. It's like everything is to be sacrificed to the upward aim. And that's what God insists upon. And he's characterized as the spirit that makes that insistence. And we're characterized in relationship to that spirit. And God says something else, which doesn't make Cain the least bit happy. Cain believes that the reason he's bitter and resentful, miserable and vengeful and cursing God and shaking his fist at the sky in this prideful manner is because he's failing. And God says, that's not why you're miserable, buddy. There's an intervening variable you're not, he doesn't say that because God's not a scientist. There's an intervening variable you're not taking into account. What does he say to Cain? He said, sin crouches at your door like a sexually aroused predatory animal, and you invited it in to have its way with you. And so what does that mean? It's brilliant. It's so condensed. It's so brilliant. It's the most accurate bit of psychology of resentment I've ever seen. What does it mean? You fail. Okay. The causal consequence, you're bitter. Well, no, one of the causal consequences could be you could wake the hell up and start doing better and repent and confess and get your act together and atone and move on, right? And learn. That's causal too. You can't blame your resentment, misery on your suffering. There's an intervening spirit. What's that? The spirit of sin that crouches at your door. A predator, a sexually aroused predator. Why that? Well, because it wants to f you. I'm dead serious about that. It's a very ancient metaphor, that metaphor of, what would you say, the seminal quality of evil. What's evil? It's something you invite in, right? It's something that you creatively engage with. That's the sexual metaphor. It's something you brood on. It's something you allow to inhabit you. It's something that possesses you. The terrible people who do terrible things, the people who shoot up high schools, it's like 2,000 hours of fantasizing before they pull the trigger. And what's that a result of? Bitterness and resentment. But that's not all. It's the invitation of something in to take possession of them. And so that's what God accuses Cain of. And that makes him extremely unhappy, as you might imagine. You're miserable because you're not making the right sacrifices. You're resentful because you all invited in the spirit of sin itself. It's all to be laid at your feet. The last thing Cain wants to hear. The most corrective possible piece of advice, which he instantly rejects. What does he do? He kills Abel. What does it mean? If you're resentful enough and you're vengeful enough, you'll destroy your own ideal, right? You'll destroy everything. Why? To attain revenge on the source of your suffering, right? To foment bloody rebellion against God. That's what Cain does. That's what the spirit of bitterness forever does. Cain makes the wrong sacrifices. He sacrifices the ideal itself to his own pride. And then he tells God, my sin is greater than I can bear. Well, why? Destroy your ideal as a consequence of bitterness? You've got nowhere to go. Cain is destined to wander the land of Nod. Where's that? That's where children go when they're asleep. Sin badly enough, you'll take escape in unconsciousness. Why does Cain wander? Because he's a bitter psychopath and no one wants to be near him. And so he takes the pathway of the itinerant vagrant who's so pathological in his orientation that anyone decent will step away from him. What's the consequence of Cain's failure to sacrifice? His descendants are worse. His descendants are the first worshippers of technology. They're the first vengeful, tit-for-tat, genocidal agents. Lamech, one of Cain's descendants, says, you kill Cain and you offend Cain and you die. You offend me, 7 or 70 die. What does it mean? The pattern of resentful bitterness that characterizes Cain can make itself manifest in the broader community and turn everything into a genocidal nightmare, right? What follows? The flood, right? The flood that washes away Cain's descendants, right? Sacrifice, that's the essence of adaptation. That's the essence of maturation. It's the fundament upon which The community is predicated. I'll end with this. For 2,000 years, we've put a symbol at the center of our culture, right? Insofar as our cultures are Christian. And by the center, I mean literally the center. The cathedral at the center of the town or city, the altar at the center of the cathedral, the crucifix at the center of the altar. Why? Because it's a symbol of the ultimate sacrifice, right? The full sacrifice of self in service of future, others, community, and God. Is that the principle upon which the community is founded? The principle upon which the community is founded is sacrifice. What's the ultimate sacrifice? Well, it's the sacrifice of everything to what's good, right? That's the fundamental story of Judeo-Christian culture. Is it true? Try making your life, try walking through your life successfully without making the proper sacrifices upward. And find out